All right, I have to apologize because I left the bio of our speaker at home, and so I don't have it. But she has been a speaker here before, and she is an expert on neurolinguistic programming. Isn't that what you talked about last time? And so come and I'm sorry, tell everybody, start your presentation, please, by telling everybody your illustrious background, which is ever so impressive. She also has left a lot of business cards up here, so make sure you take one before you leave. So is your name, I know on your LinkedIn, the Mar is not capitalized. Is it supposed to be?
Yes. Oh, no.
I think it's not capitalized. Maybe it was on our. Maybe it was what I printed up on from our newsletter.
No
so I thought
worries.
maybe it wasn't.
Yes. So it's Alice Mar Rocher.
Rocher, the French way. All right.
Yes.
So Alice Mar Rocher, and she is. I should read this.
Okay,
She's a corporate trainer and a coach, but she also has her own business. And let me just have you explain your background, your qualifications, but she's a wonderful presenter, and I'll give her to you.
Thank you so much. Well, first of all, I just want to thank you for having me here. It's such a joy and a privilege to be able to connect with people. As she was so eloquently putting, we're all here, we all have a story, and I want to know yours, and I'm happy to share mine. And I think that hopefully you'll be open to some things that I have to share that you can use today and right away in your job search. I know there's a job out there for you. I've been in your shoes. I may tell a few stories about it, but I know that you'll also be in a place in the future where maybe you're in a position to talk to or consult with or just encourage someone who's in your shoes today. So I'm really happy to be here. I worked in HR for 20 years. I'm a graduate of UT, have a Master of Adult Education in Human Resource Leadership Development, and I'm one of the few people who actually graduated with a degree that they went on to use and work in the actual field that they studied for 20 years and loved it, loved every minute of it. And now I'm in a new phase of my life. I've started my own business. I'm doing corporate training, some consulting work, as well as coaching. And I've discovered something really amazing called neuro-linguistic programming. I'm not going to talk a lot about it today. Last time I talked a lot about it. And it's basically about communication between your conscious mind and your unconscious mind. And then also using those same kinds of techniques and tools to communicate with other people in a very effective way. So I'll touch on some of that today in relevance to how you're going to go about doing your job search and how you can help yourself to build the best rapport with people. So, on that, I wanted to just start out by telling you to imagine it's 2001, and I'm on a plane about to take probably the greatest adventure of my life. I'm crossing the Atlantic, and I can hear the engines roaring as the plane takes off. Finally, we settle in to the hum of the engines, and it's 9-hour trips, so a lot of us take naps, and we wake up and the sun's coming over the horizon, and we're landing in sunny Spain. I'm elated. I'm about to have a great adventure. And there's a lot of unknowns as well. There's going to be a lot of people I'm going to meet, a lot of places I've never been, a lot of things to figure out. And I'm kind of just wondering in anticipation, what is the next 9 months going to be about? A little bit like when I came to UT in 1989. Now I'm dating myself. And I remember I came from kind of a small town in the valley. I don't know if anyone here is from the valley. Anybody from the valley? No? Okay. I grew up in Brownsville, originally from Mexico, but immigrated to the U.S. when I was 6 years old. And it's a pretty small town. It definitely was a small town back then. It's a little larger now. But UT was enormous. You know, it was such a huge campus. I remember just walking around, listening to Vivaldi on my cassette player. I forget, Walkman, thank you. And just really being in awe and amazement and just had this feeling of curiosity. What was this experience going to be like? Who would I meet? New city, new friends, hopefully new career. And I had that choice and that decision to make of what I would do. So that was a very exciting time, and a time of wondering how I would be able to figure it all out. Just like in 2004 when I got laid off from Emerson. I'd been there for 2 years. I had actually returned from my trip to Europe and spent a good year looking for a job. Finally found one, and it was the largest employer I'd ever worked for. I was very excited about it. I learned a lot about working for larger organizations and how to be a strategic partner in that setting. It was also a global company. I'd never worked for a global company. It was an amazing experience, and it was over. And I wasn't sure how I was going to figure that out, or if I was going to have to reinvent myself, or how long it would take me to get the next job. So I was kind of anticipating, hoping for something better, hoping for something good, a little bit of anxious feeling of how long that would take, and again, wondering, how can I figure it out? How can I play my cards well and use my time wisely and take my energy to a place that would land me a position? So it's a little bit about the topic that we're discovering today, which is building rapport. And so, but first of all, I want to ask you, why? Why should I build rapport? What is rapport, first of all? So rapport is a relationship, this is kind of a dictionary definition, a relationship marked by harmony, conformity, accord, or affinity. It supports agreement, alignment, likeness or similarity. Since I do work with neuro-linguistic programming and NLP, the way that we deal with rapport, it's about relating to others in a way that creates trust. And understanding, seeing each other's point of view, and relating in a way that would help us basically to like each other, right? And so really what it allows us to do, building rapport, while being authentic to ourselves, it allows us to have a behavioral flexibility that helps us to connect to other people and find the commonalities that we have with them so that we can build a relationship with them quickly that will allow them to trust us, to like us for what we are, and to see themselves working with us in the work environment, especially for this context. So it's a way for us to practice influence and good communication. And surprisingly, even though we may have great technical abilities or incredible resumes, a lot of the hiring decisions that people make are made on kind of that gut feeling, that intuitive feeling, and that liking of someone, especially if we have equivalent candidates and they're both great, they're both qualified. Who are we going to hire? We're going to hire the one that we think we're going to get along with, the one that we think is going to help us achieve our mission or our corporate values and just enjoy working with, right? So that's some of the things that we're going to talk about. So imagine if you could find things in common with anyone and kind of be fast friends. Would you like to have that skill? What if you went to any place and just quickly created this kind of magnetism about you, or a trust or acceptance from wherever you were, whoever you were with? Would you like to have that? What if you went to an interview, and by the time you walked out of the interview, the person who interviewed you couldn't see anybody else in the job but you? What do you think? What difference would that make for you? What would it get you? A job, okay. What else? How would that feel? Connections, friends, confidence. Speak up if I can't hear you. Okay, so are we ready to talk about it? Okay, I would like for you, my intention for you today is for you to walk away with an undeniable certainty that you have every resource inside you to get the things you want, including this next job. So let's do this together. And I usually like to start out talking about the principles of success because I think that's really important. We can generate a lot of positive energy around ourselves. We can have a lot of technical skills, a lot of credentials. And we also have to have a plan and an outcome and know what we want first, right? Because that's how we achieve success. We can talk positively, we can have a lot of credentials, but we also need to know what is our outcome? What are we looking for? So set your intentions as you set out to job search. Know what you want, and then we have to take action. No one's going to come, or very rarely, it's happened a few times, but not that many, no one's going to come and knock at our door with the perfect job. We're going to have to go out there and find it. So take action for your goals. Then look for and respond to feedback. How is what I'm doing working? And you mentioned earlier about, putting some variety in there. If what you're doing right now is not getting you the outcomes that you want, change it up. Do something different. If people aren't reacting to you the way you'd like for them to react, stop and reflect of what behavioral modifications you could make that would get you a different outcome. So we talked about being flexible, and then always operate from a mindset of excellence. Just be your best. You're amazing. And make sure that you're always bringing that best, amazing self to the table, in particular when it relates to interview process. Okay, so let's talk very briefly about the elements of communication. This is kind of like how we communicate with each other and how we end up finding those connections and similarities and the impressions that we make of others and how they make them of us. So physiology is pretty big. It's about 55%. So when we're communicating, the message that people are receiving is 55% physiology. Okay, so that's our physiology, literally how we're expressing ourselves non-verbally. The next one is tone, so our tone of voice. So people are reading all kinds of things. I don't know if any of you, I'm going to digress just a little bit, but there's a really wonderful book called Blink, and he talks about thin slicing and how we're just picking up information. We don't even know what it is, but we get this sort of intuitive feeling. I think that Rapport includes a lot of thin slicing that we're doing. So if anyone just wants an interesting read, it's called Blink. So tone of voice, and then words is only 7% of communication. It's kind of scary, kind of fun though, because it allows us to then use all of our resources to find better communication. And so really what it means is it's a little bit on an unconscious level. So a lot of the things that we're going to talk about today are really things that we're already doing kind of on an unconscious level without even knowing it. So let's get into what some of those things are. Okay, so how do you build rapport? So sensory acuity. Sensory acuity involves really just being able to read and listen to the bells. Just like the magic that happens with rapport. But really be able to read other people's expressions, right? And so to gauge how they're reacting to you, and this is really important. I was actually teaching this to my 9-year-old this week because, kids, of course, they're developing still, but I was trying to tell her, there's a point where making a joke or doing something funny, like mimicking, because we were actually talking about my presentation, and she started just doing everything I do. You know how they do that. Blah, blah, and at some point, I'm like, that's enough. And you need to develop sensory acuity to know at what point that humorous moment becomes annoying, right? And how many times in your work settings or in your personal life have you been with someone who doesn't have that sensory acuity? And you really need to get out the door, and you're literally stepping back, or you need to get to a meeting or whatever, and they don't have that sensory acuity to just notice your facial expression, your body language. That's a really important skill to develop, especially when you're interviewing, because you're going to see when someone lights up about something. You're going to see when they kind of don't like something, or they have a question mark, so that you can answer that question even before they ask it. right? So some of the things you're looking at are muscles of the face. So we're looking at eye muscles, either, kind of more like that wrinkly look or more relaxed. The same goes for all the muscles around the mouth. And you'll notice when you have really good rapport, the lower lip, when you don't have it or when someone's sort of feeling a negative emotion, it's very tight. It's a very tight sort of look, but when you have good rapport, it's going to be a very full lip. You'll also notice color shifts when you're building rapport with people. Go ahead.
I'm just having a little trouble wrapping my head around that 7% words. If you're in a technical interview and they're hanging on your every word and it has to be precise and you have to answer them 100% correctly, I would think the words would be a little higher ranked than 7% in that, you could be smiling and being very, but if you give them the wrong answer.
And I'm not denying that you have to be technically qualified to do that job and be able to express that. But the reason that they would hire you versus someone who's equally qualified and able to explain is very likely, maybe not in all cases, but very likely going to be that gut feeling about, yeah, we're the same. We're going to be able to communicate and be on the same page and get things done together. So that's kind of more the realm that we're talking about. Is that helpful? Yes. Okay, great. So the color will begin to shift. And a lot of times it's because, and you'll feel it, actually, you'll feel kind of a warmth, maybe a warmth in the hands or a warmth around the face, kind of like when you're falling in love, right? You start to just have that relaxation and the blood will literally come to your body. I actually felt it right now. So I'm in good rapport with you. But you'll start to see that. And the moment that you see that, you know that you've made that click. And so it's really great to be able to just be aware of that and be able to use it as you're getting feedback about how you're interacting with that individual. The next thing is, of course, finding common experiences. So we like people that we think understand us and that we think are like us to some extent, right? And so in our interview process, we can be looking for what are the things that we have in common or common experiences that we've had. So maybe I said to you guys today that I went to UT. I bet there's at least a handful of people here who have some kind of common experience, at least of having been at the university, or maybe you attended the university. So now you're like, oh yeah, she's like me. She's been to UT. Or maybe she's like me and she's traveled somewhere. Or maybe she's like me and she lost a job too. Right? So what are the things that are in common that we can point out and connect with that individual? Okay, matching and mirroring. These are really fun. Some people feel a little bit funny about it, but please remember, these are things that we're doing already. And I invite you to go out, if you're going to lunch or even this evening with your family or friends, to observe how people will match and mirror each other. And so I want everybody to just put up their right hand. Okay, great. So what we're doing right now is we're mirroring. I'm mirroring you, right? Now, if I was matching you, I would put up my right hand. And it's just a simple example that, of course, you wouldn't do in an interview, but it's just to get you thinking about how we actually reflect each other when we're in good rapport. So maybe somebody is sitting back or sitting forward. And you might notice that if you see people in conversations in a restaurant or a coffee shop or whatever, you'll see both of them are leaning in. Or both of them maybe have crossed their legs. Or they're making certain gestures or matching each other's facial expressions. It's called matching and mirroring. And you can use this too to create that feeling of familiarity with your interviewer. Again, these are things that we're doing naturally. It's just becoming consciously aware of when and how that's happening and how we can contribute to a greater connection to our interviewer. So that's matching and mirroring. We're going to talk a little bit more about that in a minute. You can also match and mirror your tone of voice. The volume, we're going to get a little bit more into that. And also words. We're going to talk a little bit about words. This is really interesting and fun stuff. My daughter also had a great time with this one. So I'll have to tell you about that. It's a lot of fun having a 9-year-old. I don't know, how many people have kids? How many people act like kids? Oh, no. I act like a kid sometimes, too. All right, so physiology first. So posture, we talked about posture. Of course, you want to have good posture. You don't want to get into your interview like this, but you want to kind of match and mirror the physiology of your interviewer. So if they're maybe a little bit sitting back, then maybe you don't want to be right in their face, right? You want to make sure that they're comfortable and that you're kind of matching and mirroring their posture. At some point, we'll get into how you can actually pace and lead. Once you know that you have good rapport with someone, you can actually lead by physiology, and have them actually follow you. And this is really interesting to watch. So you can also play with this, go build rapport with somebody you like, and then watch and see if they follow your body movements. And it just happens naturally. It's a wonderful way that we connect as human beings. All right, so gestures. Maybe somebody uses their hands, or they're using a specific gesture that you can kind of, not so overtly, but begin to pick up. I actually do this naturally. I do this with accents, which is maybe a little bit embarrassing, but if I get with someone who has a very strong Texan accent, I'll start talking like this, and I don't even realize it. But you can definitely match their facial expressions, their blinking. Some people blinking. It also will allow you to get into, we'll talk a little bit about, into like their tempo, their pitch. So then all of a sudden the body, the voice, all of it is coming together, and there's just this wonderful synergy that begins to happen between two people. And we can make this connection with anyone, right? Because at the end of the day, we're all human beings. And so yes, we have some uniqueness, but also we're very much the same, and you'll have a lot of things in common anyway with your interviewer because you're looking to work for the same employer. You work in the same industry. You know what the jobs are about, those types of things. So, all right, blinking, breathing. Notice if they're very shallow or fast in their breathing, or if they're very slow and relaxed in their breathing, and try to just kind of match that. Try to get into a rhythm with them. And proximity, people have certain spatial distance that they're comfortable with. I think it's called a social distance. So you might want to match their social distance and make sure that they're comfortable. Yes?
What do you do if you have a panel, if you're being interviewed by a panel?
Yeah, panel should be interesting. So you're just going to spend a little bit of time as you answer questions with each one, and they're going to be matching and mirroring each other. So that's the really cool thing about rapport. If they're in rapport, then probably it's going to be easier than you think. Hopefully they'll be in rapport, right? That doesn't always happen in organizations, but so you can just pick one or two people at a time. And also, if you establish good rapport with one or two of the people, like I actually do this when I speak in groups. So I've established rapport with you. I've looked at you quite a few times. I've looked at you quite a few times. And then you guys are in rapport with other people in your group. So that's how you kind of build the rapport on a group level or in a panel level. Yes?
I have found in interviews especially, it's usually across a big desk, that the person maybe sit back, relax, but if I don't show, I'm excited talking about what I do and sitting up.
Sure.
It's detrimental to my,
Absolutely. You want to definitely be yourself and be excited and just not create an incredible contrast. So it's more just about matching them to your comfort level where you're still you and you're still selling yourself. Absolutely. I would not encourage you, if their energy is just, I would not match that energy. But you can kind of meet them at least halfway there or do some other things. Maybe the posture is not what you pick. Maybe you pick a tone of voice. Maybe you pick a gesture. Maybe you match because they've crossed their leg or their arms a certain way, right? And so you start to build rapport that way and keep your energy where you want it to be, where you can sell yourself. Absolutely. Is that helpful? Perfect. So where were we? The group. So that will happen. You have to just kind of trust the process. You'll see that it happens naturally. But in a group setting, I would say just pick a few people, and they will likely be in rapport with each other or people around them, and that'll allow you to establish kind of a little rapport bubble. Okay, we talked a little bit about tone of voice. So pitch, high or low, intonation. So some people speak in a question mark, and some people speak in a statement, and some people are very commanding. And if you match the way that they are speaking, then again, it kind of puts you on an equal level, which is a good thing, right? We're equals. We're sharing ideas. We're sharing competence. And it allows you to, again, connect with that person and be like them. Volume, tempo, that's how fast or slow they're speaking. And timbre is just quality of voice. So not that you can imitate a raspy voice, but whether it's got a lot of, I don't know, other than raspiness, how to describe it, but like a stronger tone or a softer, just from the quality of the voice and how much you're pushing on your vocal cords as you speak. That's another thing to kind of think about that you can match. So I realize that you probably can't see this very well, and I apologize for that. I almost wish I'd had a little handout. But if you email me, I think I put my email in the front. I've got cards over here. I'm very happy to send this information to you. So all of us have a preferred representational system in which we communicate and which we take information the best. The majority of us are going to be visual. Some of us are auditory and kinesthetic. And we're all a mix of these. It's not like we're only one. So you want to think about when you're speaking to people, how they might be best suited to understand you and to get in rapport with what you're about. And so if you notice that a lot of the words that they use or even kind of how they're dealing with the interview or the information is strongly visual, then that's something that you can use to help communicate better with them, right? So you're going to talk more in pictures. Can you see this clearly? I'm going to paint a picture of you. Not a picture of you, a picture for you of whatever it is. So those are some things that you can use. As far as the auditory, for example, you could say something like, how does that sound to you? Does that ring a bell? And if kinesthetic, that feels right. Right, so these are things that you can do to kind of speak to them. It's like meeting someone where they are, where they're best able to hear you, see your point, or grasp your ideas. Right? I just did it. It's so easy. Once you just start to kind of think through this, pick a few, because there's so many. It seems overwhelming. I understand. I've been there. Just pick 2 or 3 that you can use. And then just notice in those first conversations, in the emails they write to you, when they're setting up the interview time, it's going to come out. It's just who we are. So you can use that to connect with them on a better level. So that's a fun, interesting way that my daughter had a lot of fun with as well. Okay. So these are kind of fun that are very specific for the interview process. And it's basically using influential language patterns. And some of you guys are like, what is she doing now? But basically what you can do is you can presuppose in the things that you say certain suggestions that you want your interviewer to take with them. So for example, you can say, one of the things you'll like about me is whatever. So what that's presupposing is that there are many things that you're going to like about me. Right? And then it gives you the opportunity to then expand on that if you like. And it also helps them to focus like, oh, there are many things that I might like about this person, and help them to focus on that piece of information. So is works as a linking word, and the listener is not going to challenge that statement. It allows you to add a unique selling point in your interview process. I like that one a lot. This one is perhaps a little more complicated, but when you see the example, and I'll tell you how I used it. I used it recently, because I'm always selling myself. I don't have a job, right? My job is to sell myself and my service and my company. So in a way, I have a lot in common with you. I get to do this all the time. And I did it a few times in the last few days, and I'm really trying to practice what I preach and use these tools, and I think it's effective. So 3
truths. So truth, it's like a 3 yes statements. So you're getting them to agree with you. So the interviewer will accept the next statement because they're already agreeing with you. And it reduces their resistance to whatever it is that you're going to say. So it makes them more suggestible in terms of what positive attribute you want to sell about yourself. So congratulations, you've got this new contract, which means you're going to be hiring all these people. And I know you have a lot of experience in this area. So you already know the potential pitfalls. I have to say that 10 times really fast. And they're like, yes, which is why I know you're going to want to hire someone like me who has been through that process. I actually used it when I just remembered who it was. I was trying to sell some coaching services to a university locally. And I said to him, you know, you've worked so hard. I know you have so much knowledge in learning and development, and you built this leadership program. And now you've got this coaching aspect. And I know that you know so much about it, and you know that coaching is so critical, which is why you need me to come in and help you coach those managers, because I've been there. I've been a manager with all of the pressures and all of it. Man, he was like, where do I sign? Right? So, all right, so that's how you might be able to use that one. 3 yeses. Influential language pattern for continuing. I don't know if you've noticed. So I don't know reduces resistance because it's kind of allowing them to sort of make that decision, and maybe they'll choose to consciously agree with you. So if you ask someone if they've noticed something, it actually makes them look for it, right? So I don't know if you've noticed my passion for this role. I don't know if you've noticed that I have 20 years of experience in HR working with 5 or 6 different industries. Whatever those things are, the things that you want them to notice about you, you're pointing them out in a way that's going to really focus them, concentrate them on the information that you want them to know. Is this helpful? Yes. Okay. All right, good. We're getting deeper and deeper, like you're going to go home, you're like, but it's really cool stuff. If you pick 2 or 3 things that help you, I'll be thrilled. So, toward and away from language. All of us have certain motivation directions. And so, most of us are either moving away from pain or toward pleasure, just on a sort of basic psychological level, right? And so, the person that you're interviewing also has a certain motivation direction in terms of what their ideas are about the challenges. Some people are moving toward the completion of a project, or toward, the mission of the company, or toward whatever. And some people are very much moving away from risk, away from financial loss, away from, you're going to have to adapt it to your situation. But basically, if you can figure out what their motivation direction is, then you can speak in those terms, right? So if someone is trying to move to achieve something, then you're going to start to use that kind of terminology. And if they're trying to avoid cost or fix problems, then you can use that kind of language to sell yourself and to sell your abilities and your skills to create the results that they want. Okay, here's another interesting one. This is one you do before the interview. It's called perceptual positions. It's just an NLP technique. Don't worry about it. Just use it for this purpose. Put yourself in the shoes or in the perceptual position of each one of these. So, what is the company needing and wanting from you? What does the client? What does your department? Kind of all the different perceptions and positions of the interviewer themselves. And that allows you to think about how you're going to verbalize, how you're going to be able to meet those needs or give them the things that they're wanting. And each one of those will be different, but it allows you to kind of think through and plan and organize how you're going to cover those items. All right. I think this is about the last piece on the language. So this one, I think is super easy, and I don't know why more people don't do this. But I do this a lot when I'm prospecting, when I'm talking to clients or prospective clients. I just basically ask them to tell me what's important. And then what I do is I just take their very words and I explain to them how, in their own words, I am that person. I am the person that's going to get them the things that are important. I can carry out the things that they want to have carried out. And just basically have them describe it. Or have them describe someone who they really loved and they thought was excellent at the job. And then find how you, in their words, can be that person. Assuming that you feel that you can be, obviously. All of this is ecological. We don't want you to be a chameleon or to be out of integrity with yourself or out of authenticity. However, you apply for the job, which means that you feel that you're capable. It's more about finding out how you can communicate best with them in a way that resonates for them to decide that this is the one, this is the person. I can't think of anybody else who I want to work with in this position. So repeat those things back, ask what's important, connect it to yourself, any kind of values, characteristics that you recognize that are in you. Just feed it back to them. And then when they say, is there anything else you want us to know or whatever, because sometimes it's hard to kind of find a place to fit it in, but most of the time interviewers will give you an opportunity to say, is there anything else you want us to know about you that makes you a great fit? So that's where you can stick some of these things in as well. And then ask, assume that it's already happened. So what is the next step for us to move forward in this process? Now they have every opportunity to tell you no or wait or whatever, but at least ask as though you already know this is the job for you. This is the perfect fit. Okay. I'm going to close this a little bit on reminding you of the principles of success. So know your outcome. Set your intention for each interview. What is it that you want to accomplish? What is it that you want to communicate? And kind of using all of these other ideas that I just gave you, set your intention for who you're going to be in that interview and how you're going to present your best self to get that job. Take action. We already know what that's about. Not waiting for anything to come knocking on our door. We are creating our reality in the future. Look forward, respond to feedback. So as you're in that interview, look and see how people are reacting and adjust if you need to in the moment so that you can close that interview with a lot of power and a lot of positivity. Yes?
Have you found studies where it's easy when or easier when somebody walks in and they look like the interviewer in some way? If you walk in and you're really different, you're in a wheelchair, you're a different culture, you're a different race, this has always been a man's job and you're female or whatever, where the visual, which is so powerful,
Yes.
is really different. Have you found that the language piece, the stuff you're teaching us, can get somebody a job even when they start in that deficit? You know what I'm
I
saying?
don't have any specific research studies that I can point to. They may be out there. I personally just right now don't know of any, but I can tell you that this stuff has been around for ages. And yes, there is that book that I mentioned, that thin slicing. It's almost in some ways depressing, the way that how people make an impression and make decisions without even knowing. And some of that has to do with how we look, or maybe some of the differences. So our job is to make sure that we're putting back in their mind or in their opinion how we are the same, how we're the same, how we're connected. I wish I had a study. Now I'm going to have to go look for it because I think there are a lot of studies out there that may, support some of this. And there's more and more studies supporting some of the other techniques that I'm using with neuro-linguistic programming, but I don't know of any in this particular one. I still think it's worth using these other tools to overcome that obstacle that might be there.
Unconscious biases.
And super important, we're about to talk about this, the energy that we put out and the intentions that we have and the preconceived ideas that we have that someone's going to look at us and see that we're different, energetically we are actually putting that out. So we want to put out we just have to be really careful to make sure that we are portraying what we want versus what we don't want, toward the things we want, in all of our mentality, all of our thoughts, all of the way that we're expressing, even non-verbally. So I'd say just add that, yes.
Question about phone interviews or any kind of phone meeting where obviously the tone and language are important, but you don't have all that other stuff to help or
You don't have all that other stuff, so you just have to listen really well. You've got, yeah, you definitely have the tone, you definitely have the language, and you can still use a lot of this influential stuff that we talked about, where you're framing things the way that you want to frame them in a suggestive way to the interviewer. And hopefully you'll have an opportunity as a second interview or a third, or however many interviews people are doing these days. Sometimes we're like, oh, one more, just give me the job. I'm ready. Thank you. Is that helpful?
Yes.
Sorry.
Attire. I mean, if I walk in an interview, in the t-shirt, which is not going to get the job, but if I walk into an interview wearing a suit and no one else in the interview wearing a suit, does that affect the situation?
Well, I guess it depends. I feel like Austin, we're kind of lucky in Austin. I feel like there's so many different people, and our culture in Austin is, with the exception, I guess, of a very few employers, everyone just kind of does what's right for them. Have you ever been to the opera in Austin or socially, and someone's in their Birkenstocks and shorts next to you, and the other person on the other side is like in a formal full-length gown, and everyone's just sort of coexisting. So what I would do is just connect with them on whatever level you're able to, using all of these other tools, and not worry so much about it. And obviously, if you do your homework, you're probably going to know kind of more or less culturally. And obviously, there's also ways, I think women are maybe we're better able to do this, but you can sort of be somewhere in the middle, where like maybe you wear the khaki with the white shirt and it's like a jacket that you could maybe wear or not wear, where you kind of almost can sort of figure it out on the spot when you come in. But I would say it's more about your connection with them than having the perfect outfit. It's who you are.
I heard something that I agreed with very much, is to find out what they wear in the office and wear one step up.
I like that.
Just to show respect.
One thing I was going to say that I got caught up saying other things, but is that I always want to dress up. I would rather be overdressed because I feel, and this is just my perception, maybe I'm wrong, maybe there's some people who really don't care, but I feel like it shows something about me and how serious I am and dedicated and how professional I am, that I would rather be more dressed up than the person that's interviewing me than less. So if you're going to err on the side, I say, great, I'm glad you went with a suit. Yes.
How do you interview, especially on the phone, with somebody at the beginning recruiter level, with the hiring manager, or someone in that department? Their pants are on fire, their heads are on fire, they're frantic. You're trying to settle them down to talk about the issue, but they just keep, they just keep lining up, and we need this, we need that, we need this, you can get rid of that twice.
Yeah, that's a tough one.
That seems to be gone, well, we need somebody here now, call a fire truck, call a Marines, call a Navy SEAL.
That's great. You're lucky. You're in demand. That's awesome. So what I would do is, to the best of your ability, you're going to do that, what we call that matching and mirroring. And then at some point, again, you'll be able to pace and lead them, hopefully. If you're able to get skilled at this. When I worked in HR, I used to have to do this all the time. I had employees that would come to the office, they were prepared and set. Because in HR, basically, if there's a problem, it's on you. So employees would come in, and I would kind of have to match and mirror there. I didn't know even about matching and mirror, but I feel like I did it just sort of intuitively to sort of match them, and then I would start to speak a little bit softer and a little bit slower, and at some point they would just kind of come along with me. It takes a little bit of time. I know interviews sometimes we feel a little bit stretched for time. To the best of your ability, I would say match and then pace and lead them to kind of a rhythm that's going to give you the most opportunity to sell yourself. Yes.
Well, and let's face it, sometimes you'll walk into an interview and within 5 minutes, you don't want to be there anyway because of the culture or the environment, or
Sure.
they want to you to corner or whatever. So usually when I'm in those, I try stuff I wouldn't normally do, just to sort of test it out. And it kind of becomes like dating when you don't want them, they want you. It's really strange. Yeah.
I love that. Yeah. Yeah.
I'll try that.
This is fun. Are you guys having fun?
Yep.
It has to be fun. Life's too short. All right. These are just kind of some things that I touched on the last time. I talked a lot about energy last time. And not the woo-woo energy, but just the energy that we put out about ourselves. And it comes really just from attracting the things that you want. And if you put it out there and you believe in yourself, then other people can believe in you. And, it seems sort of common sense, but I still want to talk about it in the sense that I think that sometimes, when we're in this job search, I know for me, the times where I have to sell myself, sometimes that feels challenging, or I may give in to thinking, maybe I'm not as good as somebody else, or whatever those things are that kind of come in our mind, and we have to just kick those out. And just know that I am everything I need to be. And really believe that and act as if you've already gotten the things you got. And those are the things that you're going to attract to yourself. And if you're doing the opposite, I strongly believe there's a good chance you're going to attract whatever it is that you have put in your mind, the intentions that you set, and the energy that you put out is what you get. It's just like a smile, right? So if I look at you and I smile, you almost can't help it. You want to smile back. You finally smile. Right? And so it's the same thing. What we're putting out is what we're receiving. So I highly encourage you to do that. Love yourself, believe in yourself, and put that out there, and that's what you're going to get back. Get resourceful, Get some variety. Figure out all the things that you need to do. Believe that you have all of the resources to do it and use them. And get creative. We already talked about acting as if it's already happened. Surrender to form. I have an example that I'm going to tell you here in just a second. Sometimes we are so set on this little box, and we're going to get in this little box, and there's this other box right here, and it's pretty great. Maybe it's even better than this box, but we're so fixated that we can't see that sometimes the outcome that we're looking for is going to come in a different form, and it's going to be even better. So create that flexibility in yourself to surrender to form and let success and those things happen to you as they're meant to happen. So I landed a job a year later after I got laid off from Emerson. I was making $20,000 more, and I had a higher level position. And I'm not going to tell you that it was an easy year. It was full of challenges. Sometimes I questioned myself. I worried about money. But basically, I was able to surrender to form. The Emerson job was not for me anymore. There was something else. And I was able to make a huge jump that I could have never made if I had stayed at Emerson. There was no way I could have gotten a promotion and that kind of raise in 12 months. So I surrendered to form and I said, okay, I'll take this new job. And I learned a lot along the way. I was able to serve. I did some volunteer work. There were other things that came from it that would not have come into my life if that situation hadn't happened. I graduated from UT 4 years later with a master's degree. And as I had told you before, I did work for 20 years pretty happily doing what I had studied to do. I'm still in some ways doing what I love, which is to help people really be their best and do the things that they want to accomplish, as well as organizations to accomplish the things that they want to accomplish. And I had an amazing trip in Europe. It was 9 months that were absolutely incredible, some scary experiences, some amazing experiences, lots of change. I was a completely different person when I came back. And, just really looking forward to doing anything, because I felt at that time if I could figure out 9 months of financially, travel, languages, countries, whatever, I could do anything. And so it gave me a lot of power. And I hope this experience that you're going through now will be similar. I hope that you'll find that things came to you that were so unexpected that would have never come to you if you weren't in this situation. I hope that once you get through it, you'll feel like you can do anything. And that you'll just be curious about life and that you'll anticipate good things coming to you. And know that everything that comes your way, there's a purpose and a reason.